Thanks very much for staying with us. Time now for Eye on Africa with me, Georgia Calvin-Smith. Tonight, she's out but not down. Zimbabwe's ex-vice president picks herself up from Robert Mugabe's political snub and launches her own party to challenge the leader in 2018 elections. Also, this can't go unpunished. The ICC is to hear its first war crimes case where the victim is a World Heritage Site. A Malian extremist is accused of leaving the world a poorer place by urging fighters to gut ancient sites in Timbuktu. And African scientists account for an extremely small but important percentage of the world's research. Leading names in the field are trying to boost the profile and investment in science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, and saying that Africa's future depends on it. Well, first, having spent a decade as Robert Mugabe's number two, Zimbabwe's former vice president has set up a party of her own in her own attempt to run for the top job. Joice Mujuru fell out of Mugabe's favour in 2014. And now she's looking to ally with other opposition groups ahead of the 2018 polls.
A new political party in Zimbabwe to try and defeat Robert Mugabe in the 2018 presidential election. It's just been launched by Joice Mujuru, who used to be one of Mugabe's closest allies. Mujuru said Mugabe had not done enough for Zimbabwe, in a country where formal unemployment is above 85%.
Zimbabwe faces an urgent need for political, economic, and social reform. We are living under an unjust system.
The ruling ZANU-PF party was quick to react after Mujuru's announcement.
It's a gathering of losers. We will defeat them any time. We are ready for them. What is it that they want to tell us that they couldn't do for 34 years when they were with us in the ZANU-PF party?
Mujuru was Mugabe's vice president for a decade until 2014 when he fired her, accusing her of leading a plot to oust him. Her removal came after a campaign by the president's wife, Grace, denigrating Mujuru. Many believe Grace Mugabe, who's 50, would very much like to succeed her 92-year-old husband one day. Mujuru is 60 and was, like Robert Mugabe, a guerrilla fighter during Zimbabwe's 1970s liberation war. Analysts say she is popular, but was too close to Mugabe for 3 decades to really represent a new dawn in Zimbabwean politics.
Well, South Africa's president has survived a second no-confidence vote in a year. Though critics accused Jacob Zuma of being a one-man wrecking ball for the country's economy, on Tuesday, the leader's ruling ANC party defeated the parliamentary motion brought against him by the opposition Democratic Alliance. Now, Zuma's faced particularly fierce criticism ever since markets tumbled after he fired the trusted Lala Nene as finance minister last December. West African leaders have been hosting the Turkish president this week. After visiting Ivory Coast on Monday, President Recep Tayyip Erdogan spent Tuesday in Ghana, where he addressed Parliament and said that his country understood the difficulties faced by those African nations facing the threat of extremist attack. Our Katerina Vitozzi tells us more.
President Erdogan offered his condolences after recent terrorist attacks in the region, those in Mali and neighbouring Burkina Faso, drawing comparisons between those attacks and attacks in his home country.
35 yıldır bölücü terörle mücadele eden bir ülke olarak terör örgütlerinin hedeflerini,
Well, the goals and instruments employed by terrorists, the youth is our future. As a nation of the world, we have to take a strong stance against terrorism, which doesn't recognize any religion, language or race.
Security issues aside, the real reason behind this trip is business. Around 150 business delegates have accompanied the Turkish president on his visit. Now, Ghana is already Turkey's third largest trade partner in Africa, behind only South Africa and Nigeria. And Turkish businesses do have a growing footprint here in Ghana, especially when it comes to large-scale infrastructure projects such as the building of a new airport terminal and power provision. However, that footprint is one that Turkish diplomats want to see grow. In 2014, bilateral trade between Ghana and Turkey was at around $500 million US. Turkish diplomats, as well as their Ghanaian cooperative counterparts, want to see that figure double in the coming years.
Katerina Vitozzi there for us in Accra. Now, the International Criminal Court is to hear its first ever case of cultural destruction. Malian Ahmad al-Faki al-Mahdi is accused of leading a group of Islamist extremists in destroying ancient shrines and a mosque in Timbuktu. Now, the site is on the UN's World Heritage List, and the ICC's prosecutors said that its gutting is a war crime and must not go unpunished. Kate Moody tells us more.
A centuries-old mausoleum reduced to rubble. In 2012, Islamic extremists destroyed more than a dozen monuments like this one and burned ancient manuscripts as they imposed Sharia law across northern Mali. Ansar Dine, a group linked to al-Qaeda in the Islamic Maghreb, considered the ancient Sufi shrines to be idolatrous. Now, for the first time, one suspect may be held accountable. Prosecutors at the International Criminal Court accuse Ahmad al-Faki al-Mahdi of leading the destruction of 9 Sufi mausoleums and a mosque in Timbuktu. In the 14th and 15th centuries, the city was a center of Islamic learning and trade in the Sahara and had been deemed a protected World Heritage Site by UNESCO.
It's a clear message that crimes like this don't go unpunished. That's the thing. Of course, we understand that this is one case, one person, and what we see today in many fronts, too many fronts, from Mali to Libya, Yemen, Afghanistan, Iraq, Syria, etc. Too many fronts, is a massive destruction.
UNESCO hopes the case will set a precedent for the ICC to intervene in other cases of mass cultural destruction. Similar damage has been carried out by the Islamic State group, notably in the Syrian city of Palmyra. Since a French-led military operation helped oust extremist groups from northern Mali, the UN has led efforts to restore 14 of the mausoleums that were destroyed in Timbuktu. It's vowed to continue protecting cultural treasures around the world.
Well, currently only about 1% of the world's scientific research comes from Africa. With so much of the continent's growth plans requiring investment in power and infrastructure, leaders in the scientific community are calling for more attention also to be paid to the development of science, technology, engineering and math-based fields. Now, things are changing and research output is on the up, more than doubling between 2003 and 2013, but it's still far from a priority. Well, this month, an international conference aimed at raising the profile of the continent's science industry is being held in Dakar. I'm now joined by one of its organisers, Thierry Zomahoun. Thierry, thanks very much for taking the time out to speak to us. It must be a pretty busy week in the run-up to the opening of that the conference in Dakar. Why did you feel that there was a need to hold an event like this?
When you look at the map of major scientific events going around, you see AAAS in North America, you see STS in Japan, you see ASOF in Europe, but there's no such major scientific event on the African soil. So we founded the Next Einstein Forum to offer young African scientists with a platform that will bring Africa to the cutting edge of science. We want this platform to be a place where science meets industry and society in Africa. We want to make it possible for young African scientists to be able to engage and interact with the global scientific community without, for instance, worrying about getting a visa to go to France, getting a visa to go to the US, because they know that they happen to be living in geographic locations where they're likely to not get a visa to fly and go out of the country no matter how smart they are.
Now, that is a good ambition to make sure that young aspiring scientists have accessibility to an event like this, but an event is not going to change anything overnight. What is it that has held back the progress of awareness or investment in African science so long?
There are many factors that have held back Africa on scientific ground. One is colonial. You know that during the colonial era, Africans did not have access to science education. Clerk administrative tasks were the only things they could be trained in. So, but post-independence, our governments, our leaders have not quickly turned down reversed the trend. And more people have gone into social sciences and humanity. Nothing wrong about that. But you cannot propel Africa's transformation without investing in STEM. So what we're doing is not just a one-time event. It's an institution that is bringing together the global scientific community and bringing them to Africa to interact with Africa's young talent, scientific and technological talent. We also want, through the next Einstein Forum in the next decade, few decades to come, to bring down walls for women in science. And women will be represented in Dakar. You will see 40% of participants composed of women scientists. And when I say 40%, it is not just about the quantitative representation. We have women of talent. You have great researchers, mathematicians working on robotics.
Tiayi Zulmahan, thank you very much. Unfortunately, that's all we have time for, so I'm going to have to cut you off there. But we are looking forward to the new Einstein Forum, which will be taking place on the 8th of March in Dakar. That's it for Eye in Africa. Stay with us, more coming up.